I can go back in time. I feel unfair.
I have even covered him with a sticky note because I do not want to see him. As a result, he learned the needed behaviors and actions to become a master manipulator. He easily was able to put on an act with a face to match an angel. I am only alive today because I lied to him when he threatened my life that terrifying night.
Imagine being 17 years old, committing an unspeakable double murder against your own parents in your Michigan home, and getting locked away for life. Case closed, right? Not exactly. Thanks to a massive shift in constitutional law, Marshall's life sentence was recently thrown out, bringing him back to court 17 years later for a second chance at freedom. His defense team is pushing a compelling narrative of severe childhood abuse and complete rehabilitation. But there's just one problem. His surviving sister is about to take the virtual stand, and she's absolutely furious. Let's see what happens when a dark family secret is exposed in open court.
People State of Michigan versus Marshall Scott Sosby. We are here today for sentencing. Sentencing guidelines in this case are calculated 225 to 375 months. Ms. Brookman, do you agree with that computation of the guidelines?
I agree with the totals, Your Honor. I first want to take a moment to acknowledge the tremendous loss that the Sosby family and so many others experienced by losing their loved ones, Carmen and Michael Sosby. Marshall's actions killing his parents were senseless. His siblings should have never had to endure that loss at such a young age, and his grandparents should not have had to have buried their children. We're here today because the Michigan Supreme Court held in People v. Stovall that a life with parole sentence for an offense committed by a child violates the Michigan Constitution's prohibition on cruel or unusual punishment. At the time of this offense, Marshall was 17 years old. He was a scared, immature, and impetuous kid. Today, Marshall is 35 years old. He has grown and matured from that abused 17-year-old into a remorseful and thoughtful man. He spent the last 17 years participating in programming, bettering himself and those around him. He has spent that time self-reflecting and living with the pain of this offense. When fashioning a new sentence for Marshall, there are many considerations for this court. A sentence must be proportionate to the offense and the offender. People v. Boykin and People v. Eccles require this court to consider the mitigating characteristics of Marshall's youth at the time he committed this offense. The first Miller factor is chronological age and its hallmark features of youth. Marshall's chronological age is mitigating. He committed this offense when he was 17 years old. Our case law tells us that youth is always mitigating and must be considered for its mitigating impact. The brain science tells us that adolescents, compared to mature adults, have a reduced ability to control their impulses in a complex or emotionally charged situation. The next Miller factor is the circumstances of the family and home environment. This case is unique because Marshall killed his own parents, who subjected him to extreme abuse and neglect. It may sound like I'm making excuses or justifying their murders, but that's not the purpose of talking about what it was like for Marshall while growing up. The law is clear that this factor is relevant to juveniles' characteristics of youth. Even if Marshall hadn't killed his own parents, what he experienced in his home as a child and growing up is significantly mitigating and would be relevant to this court when crafting a proportionate sentence. Marshall's father was abusive towards Carmen and his children. When Marshall was 3 years old, Michael, his father, knocked him down because Marshall got in the way of him threatening his wife with a machete. Growing up, not only was Marshall unable to extricate himself from his father's horrific abuse, but even his mother was frequently unable to leave and keep her family safe. The abuse was so extreme, Carmen tried to escape her husband's abuse on several occasions, fleeing to different states and even out of the country. Marshall grew up with an emergency backpack, something like his mother also had, in case they needed to escape for safety. Because of her own abuse, Carmen did her best to care for her children, but there were times when she left on her own, leaving Marshall and his siblings behind. On some of these occasions, Michael would have Marshall call his mom and beg her to come back. The escapes were never successful. They always ended up with Marshall's parents getting back together, and the violence would continue. Marshall grew up near his paternal grandparents and who would try to protect the children when they could, but Michael frequently would not let his parents see their grandchildren if they were trying to intervene between him and his wife. As he grew up, Marshall experienced abuse, like his father handcuffing him to his brother, holding him underwater in a pool, using a taser and electric collar on him as punishments. In the year leading up to this offense, Marshall's father, holding a 9mm gun, ordered Marshall outside and to face away from him. Michael shot Marshall in the back, causing him to fall to the ground. It wasn't until his father was standing over him that Marshall realized his father had switched out the Smith & Wesson for a paintball gun. Marshall grew up in tremendous fear of his father. He felt protective of his mother and wanted to help, but he was a child who also needed to be protected. And he was not getting that from the adults in his life. He spent a lot of time alone, retreating to the comfort of video games, fantasy worlds, and online friendships. He experienced things no child should have to experience, especially by the person who is supposed to be his protector. He saw things that no child is supposed to see. What Marshall experienced as a child, both trauma and neglect, mitigates in favor of a sentence of 225 months for the homicides. The next Miller factors are the circumstances of the event and the ability to navigate the criminal justice system. On September 23rd, 2008, Marshall got into a fight with his father about his cell phone and unjustifiably shot and killed his father and his mother. Marshall then threatened his sister Samantha's life when he pointed a gun at her and told her not to tell the police what really happened. He initially denied his actions, lying to police. Following the offense, Marshall was found to be incompetent for trial for a period of time. He was admitted to the Center for Forensic Psychiatry before he was eventually restored to competency. In 17 years of incarceration, Marshall has incurred only one Class 1 misconduct and only 9 misconduct tickets total. He's been at the lowest security level possible for the last 12 years. His misconduct record is below the average for an incarcerated inmate in Michigan. His record is especially exemplary because we know that juveniles earn a lot of those early misconducts in the first years that they're incarcerated. And in 2010, he earned his GED in prison. He's currently enrolled in Jackson College and is a member of the Honor Society. Marshall has meaningfully engaged in as much programming as has been available to him. Most recently, Marshall finished a personal integrity course and earned a 4.0 in his English course. In terms of trades and job readiness for when he comes home, Marshall has participated in study courses like commercial driver's license, advanced business, real estate, small business, and programs like computer science, legal research, Money Start computer-based instruction, and build your own financial future. Marshall has also been involved extensively in the Prison for Creative Arts program, also known as PCAP, through the University of Michigan, participating in creative writing and theater. As we think about Marshall's future, he recognizes how lucky he is to have had the support of his grandfather until his grandfather passed last year, and to have the support of his grandmother. Marshall took responsibility and pleaded guilty to second-degree murder when he was still a child. Sentencing Marshall to a sentence that is just as harsh or even harsher than the range for first-degree murder juvenile would be disproportionate. When it comes to protection of society, Marshall has been housed at the lowest level of security available to him for the last 12 years. In 2012, just a few years after arriving to prison, Marshall's risk assessment on a prison evaluation posed such a low risk for violence, MDOC removed him from the waiting list for mandatory violence prevention programming, as he did not need this because of his low risk score. I'm asking this court to resentence Marshall to 225 months on the homicide offenses.
I was a horrible person who created a void and destruction within those I loved and cherished and in my community. When I took the lives of my mom, Carmen Sosby, my dad, Michael Sosby, my mom, her husband killed. I imagine she was overwhelmed with betrayal, grief, sadness, confusion, gut-wrenching pain. Never truly be able to correct what I've taken and the emotions of pain I place on my family, friends of the family, and society. And on that horrific day, Tristan almost told me about how you took your shoes off and said, "Mama, get at home." You were so young, and what happened didn't dawn on you. You slowly learned that they were never coming back. I know you were picked on at school because of your parents were dead. Seeing your friends spend time with their families during holidays, when it opens a wound, you'll never have those moments. You never experienced having our parents. You never had a chance to have the conversation you could have had with them. And now you just had a son. And I know your son will never get a chance to see their grandparents. I'm so sorry for making you go through life with shattered pieces. Devin, you were always the one with the golden heart who never wanted to hurt anyone's feelings. On that horrific day, you had no idea this would happen. I can only imagine your fear, terror, and confusion as you heard gunshots. You saw how much I love Mom, yet I killed her. You might have thought you were going to die too. I traumatized you. I betrayed you. At times, I wondered if you moved out of state to get away from all of this. Samantha, I made you feel like you were going to die. I tore your soul apart. How was your reaper? It was like, oh, it was like a horror movie for you. You saw me take Dad's life. I was your champion. And then you saw me take the life of Bob, someone I cherished. And you thought you were next because I threatened you. I know this fear that you've been living with your whole life, your whole world, has shifted again because of my resentencing. I don't want you to live in fear. I want you to find peace, security, and stability that I've taken from you because of my actions. I cannot do what I did, so I wish I could. I realize that all the words I'm speaking today are not enough. I can't go back in time. I failed my family.
I'm going to send you a request to start your video. If you prefer not to start your video, you don't have to accept that.
I would much
If you
rather
like-
not.
Okay.
I am the sister of Marshall Sosby, who I will refer to as my older brother from here forward to avoid using his name, so I am able to get through this statement. Using my older brother's name in any sense creates significant distress for me, which may affect my ability to remain focused. While providing this crucial, never before heard in this case statement, I have even covered him with a sticky note because I do not want to see him. For this reason, I will refer to him in general terms. I understand that this defense and criminal heavily rely on the victims to be too scared to relive these memories so that they may then paint their own images of what happened. So I am here at the risk of reopening these disturbing memories to relay the full truth. I am submitting this statement after many years of being unable to speak on these matters in a formal setting. Since the horrific tragedy, I have not felt able to testify or provide input in proceedings involving my brother. When I was a minor, I was not permitted to testify in court by my grandparents. And over the years, I have struggled with fear and distress when even receiving correspondences related to the case. I am here now to tell you plainly and without apology how my brother's crimes have destroyed my family's and my life. I am curious if they are aware of the real reasons he snapped that night. His cell phone taken from him due to an outrageous bill, cutting his communications with a girlfriend in a different state where they planned to be wed in a Nazi-themed ceremony. I wonder if you were all aware of his dark side and his demons he believed he could summon to hurt others, or of the violence he inflicted upon his siblings throughout our childhood. I truly feel the courts are in the dark on how deep his evil is rooted. I am here today to fill in those missing pieces to this story. In 2008, he brutally stole the life of our parents in front of me and my younger brother, Devin. That moment, like so many others during our childhood, was only one episode in a long history of violence and cruelty. Growing up with him was not merely difficult, it was a constant nightmare. We endured repeated physical beatings, relentless psychological abuse. He would turn our parents against us by destroying or damaging things. For example, dumping every single item of clothing in the middle of our rooms and telling our parents that we did it because we hated them. He often created situations designed to turn the adults against us while protecting his own image. What frightened me the most was how quickly he could change his behavior when authority figures or adults were nearby. Moments after hurting or threatening us, he would instantly smile, act calm, kind, and completely harmless. A perfect angel. I remember him hurting us. And then, the moment he heard an adult approaching, switching demeanor entirely, while silently squeezing or pinching our arms as hard as he could as a warning to not say anything. That constant message that speaking up would lead to retaliation shaped my childhood and is a large part of why I have remained silent and fearful for so many years. We, as children, tried to get help. We told our elders. Throughout my childhood, my older brother used intimidation and threats of violence towards my younger brother, Devin, to influence what he reported to our parents and family. Because of this, my younger brother would deny my accounts and support my older brother's versions of events out of fear. Over time, this led to my parents believing that I was not credible. As a result, he learned the needed behaviors and actions to become a master manipulator. He easily was able to put on an act with a face to match an angel. Because of my family's failure to see through this, the harm continued and deepened, leading to that horrible night. I begged to be believed. No one protected us in time. The consequences of his actions are with me every single day. I am angry. I am angry for what he did, angry at the long shadow he cast over my childhood, and angry at a system that has failed to stop him sooner. But beyond anger, I am terrified. The thought of him being released haunts me. I do not want him near me, my family, or anyone else he may encounter in the public. One of the most painful parts of this process has been hearing the narrative simplified in ways that erase what I experienced directly at his hands for years. Part of why I have remained silent for so long was because attempts to speak out about the abuse and fear within my family were minimized or explained away. My own grandmother stands on my brother's side, even after I told her the whole truth as a child. Likely, this is why she did not allow me to testify as a minor, as well as why she and I have not gotten along. Her defense is despicable and in a dishonor to the truth, as well as a slight against my mother and her own son who loved her dearly. Even after disclosing what we experienced living with our older brother, the truth was dismissed rather than protected and brought to the court's attention. Her involvement with my older brother was one of many reasons why I left her home when I was only 16. Even after leaving their place of residence, her support was non-existent, pretending I did not exist, as she did with my mother countless times before. and even refused to support my continued education when I was in high school. The silence and disbelief of her actions follow me even now. I know the defense may focus heavily on my father's shortcomings and conflict within our household. So many stretched truths have been told over these years, it sickens me to hear these things about our father. While he was not perfect, he brought so many smiles to our family as well as anyone he encountered in the community. Many people have even come forward to tell us of the lasting positive impacts he left on their lives after his passing. To hear him being painted a terrible father or an abuser is sickening and a cheap excuse for my older brother's terrible actions. Yes, my family was not perfect, and there were unhealthy dynamics and discipline that affected all of us. I do not deny that. But I also need the court to understand that my brother's abusive behavior began long before the murders, and cannot simply be explained away as one emotional outburst. As far back as I can remember, I lived in fear of my older brother. If anything, he was the favorite because he was never seen or caught doing wrong. Through the scapegoating and intimidation methods he practiced daily. I understand the courts may hear about his good behavior while incarcerated. I cannot say that behavior surprises me. In my experience growing up with him, he was able to present himself one way to authority figures and another way behind closed doors when he had us alone. One of the most terrifying aspects of living with him was that retaliation did not happen publicly. It happened privately when no one else was there to witness it, where he would whip us with belts. He would punch us. He used his little sister's body in any way he felt and screamed as loud as he could in our ears. He always made sure to get even. This is what created an environment of constant fear about speaking up or against him. Because of that, outward compliance alone does not make me feel safe, nor does it reassure me that the underlying danger is gone. I know his tricks. In many ways, his ability to appear controlled and cooperative to others was always part of what made him so difficult to protect ourselves from. His ability to charm and deceive is not rehabilitation. It is the same skill he used to harm us and evade accountability. If the court considers any reduction in his sentence or early release, I beg you to put the safety of victims and the community first. Do not be persuaded by polished behavior in custody. The night our parents died, I truly believed I survived because I told him I would not speak against him and would lie to the police about his actions. He was less than 2 months away from being an adult when he killed my parents. He knew what he was doing. Please do not allow him to exploit this hole in the law. Thank you for hearing me today and for considering the real and lasting costs of his action. I am only alive today because I lied to him when he threatened my life that terrifying night.
At the end of this highly emotional resentencing hearing, the judge handed Marshall a minimum of 260 months, or just over 21 and a half years, and a maximum of 62 and a half years for the murders, plus 2 years for the gun charge. Because he was credited with the 6,441 days he's already served, Marshall is suddenly looking at a very real possibility of parole in just a few short years. It's a bitter pill to swallow for his sister, who clearly believes he's a master manipulator who successfully played the justice system. What do you guys think? Did the judge make the right call by following the Supreme Court's guidelines, or is Marshall too dangerous to ever let out? Let me know your legal takes in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.
Please don't let this monster fool you with his good deeds and model citizen behavior. He is a true master manipulator who had our entire family fooled.
Sentencing in a case where lives have been lost is as difficult as it gets. And I always say that, but this is a particularly difficult situation given the nature of the crime, the nature of the circumstances, and the nature of the United States Supreme Court in Miller versus Alabama decided that mandatory life sentences without the possibility of parole for crimes committed before the age of 18 were unconstitutional, violate the Eighth Amendment's prohibition on cruel and unusual punishment. In doing so, the United States Supreme Court acknowledged that as a result of adolescent brain development, children have diminished culpability compared to adults and a greater capacity for rehabilitation. The Michigan Supreme Court in the 2022 case of People versus Stovall held that life sentences with parole for juvenile offenders violates the Michigan Constitution's prohibition against cruel or unusual punishments. Consistent with Stovall, Michigan Supreme Court entered an order in this case vacating Mr. Sosby's sentence as it included a parolable life sentence. Cases decided by the United States Supreme Court and the Michigan Supreme Court make one thing abundantly clear, and that's that youth matters in sentencing juvenile offenders. It goes without saying that the offenses here are among the most serious that we face in society. 2 murders, felony firearm, assault with a dangerous weapon, and interfering with a police investigation. Obviously, Mr. Sosby had no prior criminal history before committing these offenses. Emotional wounds caused by these crimes obviously have not fully healed, and as we just heard, are, at least in one case, wounds that are still very raw. Mr. Sosby was 17 years old when he committed these offenses, which include the murder of his parents. His family and home environment, as outlined in documentation that I have, were dysfunctional, and I would even say highly dysfunctional. And unfortunately, Mr. Sosby's mother was unable to protect him. His record while in custody includes only one significant infraction over a long period of time. It's extremely low when measured against the typical rate at which inmates accrue infractions. Based on the report of Richard Stapleton that was attached to defendant's brief, stands in particular contrast to the fact that younger offenders are more likely to have a higher number of infractions while incarcerated. There's been an argument or a statement here today that that behavior is part of manipulation by Mr. Sosby to look good or minimize what's happened here. Length of time that this behavior has gone on and the setting in which it has gone on suggests that it is something real and substantive as opposed to the manipulation. The decisions of this US Supreme Court and the Michigan Supreme Court as it relates to juvenile sentencing, and that is that youth matters. With respect to the interfering with police investigation sent to the board that Mr. Sosby served 57 to 120 months with Michigan Department of Corrections. With respect to the assault with a dangerous weapon charge, it's the sense of the board that Mr. Sosby served 23 months to 48 months with Michigan Department of Corrections. With respect to both of the second-degree murder charges, it is the sense of the court that Mr. Sosby served 260 months to 750 months with the Michigan Department of Corrections. And with respect to the felony firearm, it is the sentence of the court that Mr. Sosby served 24 Department of Corrections. By law, felony firearm has to be served first, and the other charges are consecutive to the felony firearm charge. We will have to do the math on that, but it's 6,441 days total. The first amount is applied toward the 24 months of the felony firearm, and the balance is applied toward the remaining charges, which are concurrent.